What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, presented by Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Thanks, as always, for taking the time to hang out. If you're watching here live on our FTN YouTube page, smash the like button. If you're watching here on Game Plus Network, we appreciate you. Hopefully, we have a heck of a show lined up for you here today. There are 11 games on the ice. We're going to dive into it just a little bit. Some NHL props, some picks. I broke it all down with Eric Young. Dangle Bet Selly is live over at FTN YouTube page and FTNBets.com. Also available wherever it is that you listen to your favorite podcast, just like this show, Mean Streets, is as well. And if you are watching on Game Plus, we ask you to head on over to our FTN YouTube page, smash the like button. We're still asking for your favorite bet of the day, and it could be your favorite bet maybe in the NFL. Super Wild Card weekend is just a couple of days away, and it all starts with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Las Vegas Raiders, and I am super jacked here for our guest here today. It is Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic, who covers the Cincinnati Bengals. He is also the co-host of Hear That Podcast, Growlin'. We are going to talk everything Bengals on this show. How are the Cincinnati Bengals going to deal with Max Crosby? That's one question I'm going to ask him. How are the Cincinnati Bengals going to deal with Hunter Renfrow? How are the Raiders going to deal with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon? It should be a phenomenal game this weekend. The line has moved. It opened up at 6 for the Bengals. I'm seeing some spots 5.5, 4.5, 5. Make sure you use our free prop shop and parlay calculator over at ftnbets.com to get the best possible odds. Man, I'm super jacked for Paul Dehner Jr. I had some time to work with him before in the past over at The Athletic. I helped produce Hear That Podcast, Growlin'. I did nothing. I sent them email links. I listened to them. Highly entertaining. Them is Paul Dehner Jr. and Jay Morrison. Man, super sharp dudes. Not just heavy Bengals talk. Jay's got some stats. They got some bets. They're talking bets. They have a lot of fun on Hear That Podcast, Growlin'. So I'm really looking forward to just talking to Paul. It's been a little bit, and just getting his thoughts on this game this Saturday. It's been a long time since the Bengals have won a playoff game. We talked about it yesterday, 1991. It's been a long time. Boomer Esiason was the quarterback at that point, and he's been in the news recently, not because of his play against the Houston Oilers back in 1991. I mean, he was talking about Aaron Rodgers potentially boycotting the Super Bowl if the Packers got there. I will not be asking Paul about that. I'll be talking about this game here today, his thoughts, the keys. Is there any adjustments that they're going to make from that Week 11 win in Las Vegas, where they really kind of rolled against the Raiders, but it wasn't a big Joe Burrow game? It was a lot of Joe Mixon on the ground. They got it done with their defense. Their defense has been much improved this season. A lot of takeaways this year. Las Vegas has struggled with turnovers over the past couple of weeks, and the Bengals, they don't have a turnover over the past 4 weeks. So I want to get Paul's thoughts on everything related here with the Bengals. And I got a couple things from his article that I just thought were fantastic. Like, the Bengals playoff drought has spanned 681 players, 97 coaches. Some great quotes from Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator, talking about Joe Burrow and just basically being a badass. And that's really what he has been this season, and certainly down the stretch. So Paul Dehner Jr. is hanging by. And again, we are asking for your favorite bet of the day. Your favorite, maybe it's an NFL pick. We'll take those as well. It could be any bet, any prop that you like. The odds, it does not matter. Leave it there in the YouTube section of this show. If you're watching here live on our FTN YouTube page, you can just refresh the page once this show is over. Leave your favorite bet. And as I mentioned yesterday, if you're looking for a DFS package, FTN Gold, 11 games on the ice here tonight. We're going to have a lot of NHL coverage over at ftndaily.com. And the FTN Gold package, you got some college sports included in there, NASCAR, a lot included in that FTN Gold package. And it is PGA season, right? Brian DeCourty jumped in here yesterday, and we talked about the Sony Open and all the success that he has had early on. This is only the second tournament, but I saw a lot of green screens in there as well. So I'm going to give you guys, the viewer and the listener, an opportunity to tell me what you want. If it is a betting package, and a reminder, FTN betting package, you get all the picks, all the bets across all the sports from everybody, including projections and all the Discord channels in there as well. Or maybe you want a PGA DFS package as well. That is going to be up to you. Leave your favorite bet of the day, and we will circle back on Monday. We'll pick all the winners, and we will draw on a Monday. Okay, one break. We'll get into some hockey, got some NHL picks for you, and then Paul Dehner Jr. is stopping by. He's about 15 minutes away. We're going to talk Bengals and Raiders here on this show. But first, a couple NHL props and a couple picks as well. Keep your luck. Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Watch Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Let's turn our attention to the NHL. I really want to give most of this show to Paul Dehner Jr. Tino's going to drop by. There's only a handful of games in the NBA. We will talk some NBA picks, but like I said, this game to me is one of the more fascinating matchups in the NFL this week. The Raiders and the Bengals. I mean, who would have thought that these two teams would be in this situation in the playoffs, right? The Bengals last year from worst to first in the AFC North, and I think if you're a Bengals fan, you may be a little nervous about, just the playoff drought and things that have happened with this organization, but you have to be excited, don't you? You have to be excited about what is to come here over these next few years with Joe Burrow and with Jamar Chase, the connection that those two have had over the years, and it's certainly transitioned into the NFL from their LSU days. And even if you're a Raiders fan too, you have to feel a little excited about this week too. They have faced so much adversity this season. They've lost a lot of players on their team, a head coach firing. Really, I mean, he resigned. He was going to get fired anyways, Gruden, but you just don't see a team change coaches midway through the season and then make the playoffs. They have 6 walk-off wins this year, wins in the final play of the game. They're the only team in NFL history to have won 4 straight games down the stretch by 4 points or fewer. I think this is a fascinating matchup. I'm seeing some people in our chat talk about how they don't know what way to go. Brendan Gilden, I feel you. I hear you. You like the Raiders. But this is a Bengals team that can come at you in waves. We'll talk about it in a little bit. 11 games in the NHL. Where do you start? Tino, you got some picks for us? We got some shot props. We got some points. We got some picks. And here we go. We're starting with Matt Duchene on the board here today. He had 6 shots and 23 minutes of ice time in his last game against the Colorado Avalanche. Now, that game went to overtime, so he had a little bit more ice time. But it doesn't sound like Philip Forsberg is going to return for this game. And even if he does, I still like Matt Duchene in a matchup here against the leaky Buffalo Sabres. As I mentioned, he had 6 shots in his last game. You can get him over 2.5 shots at minus 105 over at Caesars. You see Nicholas Suzuki on the board there as well. Slick Nick. A tough back-to-back. It's tough to really target a player in a back-to-back game, but he's young. He's averaging a career high in ice time, 20 minutes. He's lived in the 23, 25-minute range over the past couple weeks. Now, the Canadiens are not fully back at full health here, but they did have 8 regulars return to their lineup last night, a loss against the Bruins. This game here tonight against Chicago, we could see a lot of offense. I like a lot of shot props in this game. DeBrincat has moved to 3.5. I'll probably pass on him, more on him in just a little bit. But Patrick Kane is in play. But for Suzuki, he's cleared 2.5 shots in 7 of his past 8 games, including last night, like I said, in a tough spot against Patrice Bergeron and the Boston Bruins. So I am riding with Slick Nick here today, and you can get him at plus 120 over at Caesars. Those who have Bet365 north of the border, you're going to see him plus money as well. Evgeny Malkin returned to the lineup the other night, and he had 4 shots in 17 minutes of action. He had 2 goals. He had 3 points. A lot of his shot opportunities came on the power play. They were really feeding him the puck on the power play, and why wouldn't you, right? Crosby's that setup man. Letang is that setup man. Gensel has a great shot, but getting Malkin here against the Los Angeles Kings, over 2.5 shots, I'm going to take that. Jack Hughes is juiced up a little bit here, but I still like him. You can include him in parlays. He's cleared 2.5 shots in 5 of his past 6 games. The Islanders haven't played since January 1st. They've only played 3 games over the last month. A lot of postponed games in the NHL, and the Islanders, now they're starting to come around a little bit, but Honestly, this is still a team that has struggled defensively, which is strange, right? Barry Trotz, I think he's also in the COVID protocol list, Barry Trotz and Ryan Pulock. So they are missing a key component to what they do, and that's their head coach and then one of their best defensemen. But it is Noah Dobson season, guys. But for Jack Hughes, 2.5, you can put him in a parlay. Also, Jordan Cairo, the days of Cairo plus money 2.5 shots may be over. But this is another guy that certainly you can include in a parlay. He's cleared 2.5 shots in 4 of his past 5 games. He's got 19 shots over that span, and he enters tonight with a 5-game point streak, 5 goals and 11 points. I also like Buchnevich in that game, and I like Jared McCann in that game as well. The Kraken, yes, when you look at some of their numbers at 5-5, they don't really give up a whole lot. They're not getting the goaltending. Last night they got shelled as well, and this is a team since the pause. They're allowing 4.6 goals per game, and they have a sub 70% penalty kill rate. So I think Jordan Kyrou and a lot of these Blues are certainly in play. You notice that I left guys like Braden Point, Svechnikov, Patrick Kane, Pasternak, Marchand. I like all of these guys still. We have a whole lot over at ftnbets.com in our bet tracker, and I will include some parlays in there as well. But these are the guys I am riding with. Duchesne and Suzuki, I think, make for a good duo. And I do like Sid the Kid, Crosby as well on that top line. No Brian Rust, right? Shooting the puck. We do have Evan Rodriguez on that line with Jake Gensel, but I noticed Crosby was shooting the puck just a little bit more in his last game. Tino, what else you got here for us? We got some point props. And these are mostly trigger man, so I think that's why we're getting some value. You got the Mean Streets pasta special there, plus 130 for an assist. He actually has more assists than goals this season. He does have 5 points in his last 3 games, but they are up against the Philadelphia Flyers here today. Pretty short-handed. Sean Couturier, their best defensive forward, not looking like he is going to play here this evening. Carter Hart can't stop a beach ball lately, so I am going to ride with David Pastrnak to get an apple here this evening. I do think we'll see a lot of goals from the Bruins, who are clicking, right? Credit to Boston for making the lineup adjustments, putting Pastrnak on the second line, and then they put Craig Smith on the top line with Bergeron and with Marchand. Marchand is red hot. He had a hat trick last night. Like, these guys are in play tonight. There's plus money for Pastrnak to get 2 points, plus money for Marchand to get 2 points, and for Pastrnak on that second line with Taylor Hall and Eric Holla, they've looked pretty good over the past few games. Andrei Svechnikov, another guy, you just view him as more of a sniper than a pass-first guy, but he does have 14 assists to 12 goals. He's got 2 helpers in his last 4 games, and they have a matchup, Carolina, against Columbus. Now, Columbus ranks inside the top 10 in high danger chances allowed, scoring chances allowed, shots on goal, shot attempts at 5-5 per 60. These two teams played on January 1st, and it was a 7-4 victory for Carolina. And if you remember in that game, Columbus was up like 4-1, and then Carolina just scored like 5 unanswered. And I think a majority of the goals came in the third period. But for a Carolina team that I think could put 4 or 5 goals in tonight, in the pucks in the back of the net, that he may hit the score sheet, right? If they're going to score 4 or 5, he's on that first power play unit. Braden Point, let's continue to ride this out. I'm shocked that we can get this at plus 150 for an assist here tonight. It's a bit of a tougher matchup against Demko and the Vancouver Canucks, who have been good since the coaching change with Bruce Boudreau. They had a loss the other night in Florida, but mostly everybody loses in Florida. But for Point, he's got 5 assists in his last 8 games. He's got 11 points since he's returned to the lineup. And Nikita Kucherov, who we gave a whole lot of love to yesterday, a little Led Zeppelin, a whole lot of love. Kucherov, 75 points in his last 54 games. That's absolutely nuts. And most of those games have just been in the playoffs where, like, it's a little tighter to score. But, he's had no problem. For Kucherov with a hat trick the last game, playing with Point, he may just fall into an assist as well. This is the one sniper on this board that doesn't have a lot of assists. That's Alex DeBrincat at plus 170. He only has 6 assists on the season, but this is a matchup against the Montreal Canadiens. We talked about them playing last night. This is one of the worst teams in the NHL. Clearly, you guys know this. I've talked about it quite often, and I do think we'll see a lot of goals. I like the over 5.5. I think we'll see some offense on both sides here. So DeBrincat could fall into an assist as well. I think that's just really good odds for him. I also think he scores a goal. And then Mika Zibanejad, plus 110 for an assist here. This is another guy. He's got more assists than goals, right? Surprisingly, 12 assists. He's got 12 points in his last 9 games. A good matchup here against the San Jose Sharks as the Rangers return to full health. And then we have some sides picks here. There's 11 games on the ice. There's a lot of favorites. I'm trying to find, an underdog that I like, and there's not a lot. Like, am I going to sit here and tell you to pay your hard-earned bucks, spend your hard-earned bucks on the Montreal Canadiens? No, I'm not. I think I can get behind the New Jersey Jersey Devils. I think I can get behind the Rangers and the Jets to win in 60 minutes at plus money, but these are my favorite plays. I like the Pittsburgh Penguins to win in 60. You can get that at plus 105. I put it last night in the bet tracker at plus 115. They're just red hot. They got Malcolm back. They're just feeling it, man. They are really feeling it. And I feel different about this team. I didn't like them heading into this season. They were dealing with some injuries. I wasn't sold on Tristan Jarry. He looks phenomenal. So, I know the Kings have played a little bit better lately. But Cal Peterson has been good between the pipes. It looks like he's going to get the start here again tonight. But, I like the Pens to win in 60, and you can get that at plus money. I think that's a pretty good price. I put them in the bet tracker last night to win by 2 goals at plus 176. Like, that's odds that I'm definitely going to get behind. The Bruins to win in 60 against the Flyers, even though it's a second half of a back-to-back. We're going to see the 2021-2022 debut of Tuukka Rask here tonight. The fans were calling for it. They were chanting, "We want Tuukka, we want Tuukka," and then Linus Ullmark had a penalty. He's probably frustrated with the chance. Like, guys, we're winning this game. I'm playing pretty good. Leave me alone here. But Tuukka Rask is going to make his 2021-2022 debut here tonight. So I like the Bruins, again, to win in 60 at minus 150. The Blues over the Kraken, just talked about their struggles at minus 135. So I'm trying to get better odds by taking these teams to win in 60. This parlay here, Pittsburgh, Carolina, and Boston, those are 3 teams to win in 60 as well at plus 495. There's another one that I have in the bet tracker. I have Pittsburgh, Carolina, and Tampa at plus 497 to win in 60. I put last night the Hurricanes to win in regulation at minus 145, the Bolts at minus 155 to win in regulation, but those odds have changed considerably, so they're not all that fancy. But again, if you are looking for a dog here tonight and you don't like all these chalky sides, like I said, I think you can get behind the Devils here. I just, no Blackwood. It's just, I'm trying to give you winners. I'm not trying to give you, dogs for the sake of giving you dogs. I think, you can change the odds a little bit by getting these teams to win in 60 minutes. And then I also, as you see there, I like the Canadiens and the Blackhawks to score some goals here tonight, most likely probably from the Chicago side of things. And the Rangers at minus 125, actually you can get them at minus 121 over at DraftKings. I think a pretty good price. A lot of their players are very affordable and underpriced in the DFS world. I will be writing up the Penguins and the Rangers here today. All right, that's it. Enough hockey. I know why you're here. It may have been for the hockey. It's for Paul Dehner Jr. We're going to talk Bengals and Raiders in here next. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you, and it is an absolute pleasure to bring in one of my favorite people in the world, Paul Dehner Jr. You are getting that tag here today, sir, of The Athletic, who covers the Bengals, also the co-host of Hear That Podcast, Growlin' with Jay Morrison. You guys got another podcast today, I assume, as you get ready for the Las Vegas Raiders. Welcome in, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. One of my favorite people in the world, man. I mean, I feel really special here. I'm ready.
Dude, I love your podcast.
Compliments. It doesn't matter how we're. I'll take whatever you got.
Yeah, I may have a couple more for you. We'll see. I may have a couple more for you. Man, you're doing some fantastic work, of course. I love Hear That Podcast, Growlin'. Of course, you know that I had a little small part of that a few years ago and watched the progress of not only you guys crushing it for the podcast, but this Bengals team. Like, are you ready, man? Like, here you go. Super Wild Card weekend starts with Cincinnati, a playoff game in Cincy.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. If you go back to sort of the tone before the season started, if we would have talked about, what are your expectations for this season? I think I felt I was in one of the most optimistic camps that you could find before the season started. And I was thinking, 8-9, right? Like, don't bet against Joe Burrow. He could get this team 8 wins. And here we are at, 10 wins, winning the division, beating the Chiefs at home in week 17, offensive rookie of the year, Joe Burrow on the fringes of the MVP debate. I mean, it really, everything has fallen just right for this team, and they're peaking at the right time. They're healthy. They get a home playoff game against a team they already beat. It feels very, very different around here. That's for sure.
Yeah, it does. So they opened up at 6-point favorites, 4:35 Eastern on a Saturday here. The odds have changed a little bit here, Paul. 5.5, some spots 4.5. The total is pretty much stuck the same there at 48.5. But Cincy favored here at home at -200, Las Vegas at +200. There's a lot of people in the chat that are kind of torn on this game, but they are feeling excited about this Bengals squad. Certainly, I am as well. Before we really get into this game, and you mentioned that they won Week 11, 32-13, and it really wasn't on the arm of Joe Burrow, a couple turnovers. It really was, some field goals, some great defense, and a whole lot of Joe Mixon in that game. 30 attempts, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I want to just get your take on just the feeling of, Bengals Nation here. You mentioned it, right? Like, this is different. I have a couple Bengals friends who, they're like, yeah, I'm excited. It's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase. I'm super pumped. You know where I'm going with this. I'm super pumped that this could be, the start of something, maybe, a few playoff games in the future, but it's the Bengals. They're going to find a way to blow this. My one buddy said, he sent me a message. He said, because they're, their last playoff win was in 1991. And he said that Bengals fans they've never been able to text message and say the Bengals won a playoff game because the first text was sent in 1992. But my one buddy, I tell him, like, you should be excited. This is great. Like, let's go here. And he's like, nah, they'll find a way. They'll just find a way. So what's the feeling like in Cincinnati? Is there like some optimism here? Or they're a little nervous?
There is a cautious optimism involved. I mean, look, you said it, like, the fabric of being a Bengals fan is when you feel like the good thing is about to happen, understanding that this is when the worst thing happens, right? That's just been part of being a Bengals supporter for 3 decades. It's not like they've never been in a position where they felt like this was the year this streak would end before. I mean, 2005 they felt that way. They had Carson Palmer and Chad Johnson, Houshmandzadeh. They felt great. 2015, even though Andy Dalton got hurt a year they started 8-0, and they still felt great even with AJ McCarron in a playoff game. They had the game won, and Jeremy Hill fumbles, and Vontaze Burfict and Pac-Man Jones commit penalties, and they went to the playoffs 5 years in a row. I mean, every time you feel like you shouldn't feel that way. I mean, in 2013, they were undefeated at home, 8-0. They played a Chargers team they had just beaten 4 weeks before, and they got run 27-6 at Paul Brown Stadium. So it's always the moments where you feel like it might be different is when it hurts the most because it doesn't go that way. That is a part of the fabric of being a Bengals fan. I will admit that. You speak logically, right? Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, like you have the better team. There should know. But Bengals fans know better because they always worry about it. That's really the thing about this. Logically, absolutely. And this team is so different, almost impossibly disconnected from their franchise history. There is no sense that anybody here feels anything about what that was and what that has been for the franchise because they're not part of it. They didn't know anything about it. The whole roster's flipped. Joe Burrow won a natty a couple of years ago with Jamar Chase, who Jamar Chase just found out there's like, hills in Cincinnati yesterday. So like none of that stuff like even associates with this team. And that's the best part, I think, for them is that doesn't exist. But Bengals fans certainly are worried because they feel like they can never feel good until they actually win the game. And then Burrow and this team changes the conversation about the Bengals. And it feels like they're on the precipice of doing that.
I mean, a couple 1,000-yard wide receivers. Burrow throws for 4,500 yards. You got Mixon 1,000 yards on the ground. Like it, and Boyd is. Nobody seems to talk about Tyler Boyd, but like, is he the best 3 in the NFL? It's crazy. I got a couple things from your article. The Bengals playoff drought has spanned 681 players and 97 coaches. Also, loved this quote from I think one of your most recent articles over at The Athletic. Check this out. This is a quote from offensive coordinator Brian Callahan. Yes, you like it, right? There's a lot that jumps out to me when I read your content, but this one I was like, oh yeah, I gotta bring this up with you. All the confidence and the smirking. He wants to take your freaking soul. Offensive coordinator Brian Callahan. People feel that. What can you tell me about Joe Burrow from the first time you had a conversation with him, the first time he threw an NFL pass, maybe his first NFL pass this season coming off a significant knee surgery, and like you said earlier, like leading a game-winning drive against the Kansas City Chiefs? Like, how has this guy evolved on and off the field?
I think he's continued to he has this remarkable down-to-earthness of him, which is why people gravitate to him, is that he's just this very normal, kind of hard-working guy who's just about all the right stuff in the work. But, a big part of that story that you had the quote is people really talked about how he just has this incredible feel for human dynamics and human interaction and how to be and treat people. And he's connected to everybody in the locker room, but it's not just that. It's not just that he talks to the defensive guys and the punter and the offensive guys and has an individual relationship with each of them. It's that he understood when he came in as a rookie that there were older guys here, that AJ Green was here and Geno Atkins was here and Giovanni Bernard were here. And this is their place. And this is not my locker room. I may be the number 1 pick. Everybody outside this building is dubbing me the savior, but he understood the way to lead this team was not to come in and act like he was that guy. It was to cede to those guys and just show up and do the work and stay understated. And he did. And that helped win the respect of so many people. And when they churned the roster this offseason, then this year's the evolution. You've seen him grow into more of a voice. He's still not a rah-rah loud guy, but become more of a voice, become more of the centerpiece and more of the face, actually with everybody in the locker room. And people just always believe they're going to win because over and over again this year, no matter how bad the spot has been, he has just been at his best when they've needed it most. And he always seems to be finding a way to pull them back. And they needed that. I mean, when you're the Bengals, like, you need a reason to believe that this is different. And he's been that. And you've seen the biggest thing, though, on the field, how that's manifested on Sundays, or in this case on Saturday, is as the season went along, he started to find more confidence and faith in his knee. I mean, he's played every game, but he hasn't been comfortable on his knee every game. That's why early in the year, even in that Raiders game, the first game, they were very run heavy. They were very much trying to stay out of 3rd and 2nd and longs and run there when they had to, because they didn't know what he was going to look like physically, how comfortable he was going to feel. And then all of a sudden late in the season, you saw him work in the pocket even more, taking off for first downs, and that Joe Burrow pocket presence that he kind of made famous at LSU, and that ability to kind of process quickly and move around the rush and navigate the trash and make spontaneous plays started showing up over and over and over again. And then the Ravens game happened, 525, and the Chiefs game happened, 446. You just look at it and you say, okay, well, now he looks like Burrow from LSU, and he's totally comfortable back there, and they have turned the ball over to him, turned the keys over. So look, you're us now. We're riding you. You are feeling it, and we're not afraid to stick you back there, even though our line isn't great. And that has kind of been the on and off field evolution of him to this point right now.
Well, that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit about the offensive line, and not just like one game against the Ravens, right? Like you smashed them twice, and then the Steelers as well. So there's been a lot of great games. I don't think anybody is even thinking about that loss to the Jets, right? Remember that? The loss to the Jets or the loss to the Browns, like that stuff is long forgotten about. And I feel like Zach Taylor has evolved as a coach as well. And I feel like he's kind of, you mentioned turning the offense over to him, and I think we've kind of seen that. Paul, let's take one quick break. We'll come back, and I want to get your thoughts on this Raiders team as well. Like you mentioned the offensive line, nobody's been sacked more than Joe Burrow. You got to deal with Max Crosby. Everybody saw Crosby. So I want to get your thoughts on maybe some potential adjustments, even though they went into Las Vegas and they won that game. I want to get your thoughts on some potential adjustments, how they are going to deal with a guy like Max Crosby, and maybe some keys to success. And also, I got to get a prediction out of you as well. So stay tuned. We'll come back after this break. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic covers the Bengals for The Athletic. You can also hear him wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. It could be on the Athletic app, iTunes, Spotify. Hear that podcast, Growling with him and Jay Morrison. Will you get together with the Raiders side? I know you guys used to do that back and forth, with the games. Will you? Yeah, who will you have? Vic
That's on today's
today?
episode. We do that every week now. We've upped our game. But this week, we had Vic Tafer in Vegas joined us on today's episode. We're on the episode of The Lead today, talking about the drought and the curse. So we got the big bump up to the network show for this week. So all eyes on Cincinnati, I guess.
Yeah, and in a good way, right? I mean, when I met you and we were talking with the podcast and you guys were first getting that going, it was all like, all right, Joe Burrow's going to be a Bengal, you get that first pick. It kind of feels like it's almost come full circle from this, not this time last year, but heading into the draft, right? Remember when everyone was talking about Penei Sewell? Like, should you get an offensive lineman to protect Joe Burrow, or should you go with Jamar Chase? Paul, I think they made the right choice, man. What can you tell me about Jamar Chase? Remember writing nonsense? Not saying your writing was nonsense, but the people who were talking about the drops, like, my goodness, like that.
Well,
that seems like...
Okay, so there's two things. Do I remember the Sewell Chase debate? Are you kidding me? This thing sapped up 3 months of my life. This was all anybody wanted to talk about, no matter where we went. Forever was that debate. And yes, I do think it's been clear that they made the right decision there. That said, the drops were real, and I really kind of embrace and enjoy this part of Jamar's story this year, in that everything that was happening in camp was real. Everything that happened in those preseason games was real. He was struggling. He was adjusting to the league. He was also a guy who didn't play at all last year, was playing in the NFL for the first time, was feeling a lot of pressure, but he understood them. Like, he never shied away from talking about them, and people used that against him, which honestly, as local media, pissed us off because those that were there and understood the context of the conversation that became the white stripe on the ball thing was just him having an honest talking through questions about what is different about being in the NFL. And people used it against him because that's how the world is. But
Right.
he never really shied away from the fact that he was struggling and he was still picking things up or whatever. But one person never stopped his message, and it was Joe Burrow. Jamar will be fine. Jamar will be fine. No
Yeah.
worries about Jamar. No, Jamar will be fine. And sure enough, in the opener against Minnesota, if people remember, he catches a deep ball for a touchdown. The place goes totally bananas. And after the game, Joe Burrow comes into the post-game press conference after they won in overtime and says, I thought that guy couldn't catch the ball, right? Like, couldn't wait to shove it in everybody's face. And because he felt like he knew what he had in Jamar, and he did work through all that stuff, and he did get his confidence rolling. And the moment he started dancing, he's had his share of drops this year, like receivers do, but
Sure.
he
Like
has just
everybody.
been remarkable, and he's evolved too. I mean, the first 7 games, he was, I want to call him a one-trick pony, but they were using him in one way. He was killing people over the top, running go routes over and over and over again, almost like they were surprised by it. So then that's on tape. People start sitting on the over top stuff. Joe Burrow starts hitting him on back shoulders, starts hitting him on slants. He starts making people miss, and he turns into a yak monster. And how do you cover him, right? And that's become the scary part, is what you saw in Kansas City, 266 yards and 3 touchdowns, was a guy who blossomed into the complete receiver that he's shown himself to be over different courses of the season in one game. And if he's becoming that, and you still have to worry about Higgins and Boyd and Mixon, that's when they really develop into, the scary group that they always thought they could be.
Right. I mean, everyone knew it was the connection they had at LSU, but to like carry that over in the NFL in the first year together in the NFL, you mentioned that big game, the most receiving yards ever by a rookie, 11 grabs, and then the Bengals record as well on the season with 1,455 yards as well. Let's talk a little bit about Las Vegas. I want to get your thoughts on what kind of adjustments. I mean, both teams are very, very different, really. I think. From that game in week 11, I was looking at some of our data, FTNdata.com, just taking a look at, Las Vegas. And this isn't a team that really blitzes at all, but they do have 70 quarterback hits, which is the 3rd most in the NFL, 250 hurries. That's inside the top 5. They're also 5th in pressures. It just feels like they're a team that's probably going to bring 4 and try to get after Burrow. We do have to talk a little bit about the offensive line. I'm sure that, in my opinion, I think that's where the game is going to be won. Like, what do you think? I'm seeing you shake your head. Yes,
Yes,
that's going to be a big part of the Bengals' offensive game plan, is trying to figure out how to maybe slow down a guy like Max Crosby, or maybe get the ball out a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and it's more than Crosby. I mean, Yannick Ngakoue and really everybody
Sure.
across that line. The thing is, what you mentioned is the dynamic of defenses that really have given the Bengals fits at times this year, and that is, if you can get home with 4 and take advantage of the Bengals' weakness up front and drop coverage, you can get to Burrow. You can take away the explosive plays, especially that Gus Bradley system where they play that deep shell and keep it all in front of them. And you can kind of take away the Bengals' explosiveness. And that's why when they went into Vegas, they played such a run-heavy game. They felt like they could run the ball, and eventually the dam would break on that one, and they could wear them down. And they did. I mean, it did play out that way. But, I think they have a little bit more confidence in Burrow and his ability to work the pocket today than they did then, where you will see more of them letting Burrow cook, so to speak. But yeah, this is the type of defense that has given them trouble, that is worrisome, because they can drop coverage and they can still get after you and take advantage of your weakness up front without having to blitz, which Burrow is as the best in the league against the blitz this year. Numbers bear that out. So teams that don't have to do that, and Vegas doesn't, are at an advantage if that's the type of defense they play.
We'll get you out of here on this. I know you got a big meeting, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me. I got to ask for a pick, dude. I got to do it. So what do you think happens here this weekend? Give me a prediction.
I think the demons are exercised, right? Like, Curse of Bo Jackson
Yes.
disappears against the Raiders. I just think you got to remove everything like you have. This team has checked off historical boxes held against them all year long. Prime time, Pittsburgh, you name it, things that were held over their head. They have checked them all off in big ways. They've won big games. They feel like they've been kind of playing playoff games for a number of weeks now, where they won 3 in a row there. And so I think for that fact, I think they're the better team. And I think that plays itself out. And you have to kind of think logically and not think like Bengals fans do, waiting for the other shoe, because the logic here says that they should win this game. And I think they do. I have them winning 27-17.
And potentially like going to play Tennessee in the second. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but right, avoiding KC potentially and playing the Titans in that second one as well. Exciting times, man. I appreciate you, dude, so much, more than you know. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Check out Paul Dehner Jr. at The Athletic. Give him a follow on the Twitter machine at Paul Dehner Jr. And make sure you check out Hear That Podcast Growlin' with him and Jay Morrison, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. We're going to talk a little NBA in here next. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you on Mean Streets as we bring in producer Tino Rodriguez _ on the Twitter machine. Man, Paul's great. Obviously, I could just there was so much more I wanted to talk to him about. Not a lot of time. I really wanted to, just for him looking at the opposing team. Like, it's not just all like Bengals. What do we do good? What are we gonna do? It's also like, man, how are we gonna stop that Hunter Renfrow guy? So it's gonna be a pretty interesting conversation on Hear That Podcast Growlin' today when they talk to the Vegas side of things. What did you take away from some things that Paul said? I mean, I think this is one of the more intriguing matchups this weekend.
Yeah, and I also think, aside from Renfrow, I think Darren Waller is still going to be a big factor in this game. Also, I love the love. Thank you, Sean, for throwing up the Tino. I'm not Paul. I'm not, it's a tough act to follow. I will say that. But I do have some tidbits here from what I got from him that I want to mention. And if you saw in the chat, I did mention it. I just want to read it off. Joe Burrow in the last playoff game, the national championship, he played with Jamar Chase, 6 total touchdowns, including a rushing touchdown, over 400 yards passing, no interceptions. Jamar Chase, 9 receptions, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I won't go all the way into saying the repeat effort, but I did think there was good value here. If you wanted to get down with just the fact that they're going to feed Chase early, I'm taking Chase first touchdown, Joe Burrow rushing touchdown, and Bengals to cover is 50-1. I think that's pretty solid odds. And if you don't want to go crazy and you shoot yourself on the first touchdown, Jamar Chase 2 touchdowns is plus 750, which is about the same thing, and you'll get it around the same thing. I like the Burrow Jamar Chase thing. I like writing that narrative. I think the key for the Bengals winning this game will be between the two of them, right? It's how they got here.
Yeah, exactly. And he's right about that other game. Like, it was a lot of mixing, right? It was a lot of mixing. They were running the rock, and it certainly could be. But what we have seen over the past couple of weeks, what Paul kind of alluded to, is Zach Taylor has kind of let Joe Burrow go. Let him have this offense. But, Brendan Gilden's talking a lot about the Raiders. You have talked a lot about the Raiders. We have picked this team on this show quite often to cover some of these spreads. They have faced a lot of adversity. They can bring the heat, man. They really could. And they can get after Joe Burrow. Burrow is, nobody's been sacked more than him, but this is, he's got so many weapons on his team. I think it's good. I don't think that they win by double digits. I don't even know if they cover. I like that the line is coming down. I'm probably going to jump on that 4 or 4.5. But when it opened at 6, I was kind of leaning like this would be a field goal game.
I was able to get to 6.5 when it opened up, and I love that even more. I was like, I don't even understand. And I did the show with Benny, which you guys could check out at the FTN Network YouTube page, which you're watching this on. His line was 5, so we had 1.5 points of value on that, which I just thought was really eye-opening and interesting. The other thing too is the weather. I think we bring it up about Buffalo, and it's going to be the same thing. In Ohio, it's going to be cold. I think they're going to try to run the ball, but it would be interesting if, even with all that weather narrative, they just come out and throw the ball with Joe Burrow. I would love to see it. And he hinted to it in the last matchup. They really didn't lean on Joe Burrow. It was a Joe Mixon show. It was a Joe Mixon show. So, and if you look at the lines, all the player props, there are values on these receivers for anytime scorers. Joe Mixon's like minus 150 or something for an anytime scorer. So I think it would be, if you want to get down with this game, I think the value is betting on some of these receivers to score touchdowns.
We'll wrap up with some NBA stuff from you. We'll save that for the next segment. You had a big parlay win last night, which we want to talk about in the next segment. But is there anything? Have you come around a little bit on some games? Are you starting to lock in some games here for this super wild card weekend?
Yeah. So if we're just talking NFL here, I've talked myself into betting the Bengals under 6. So I like the Raiders at 6.5. I think it'll be close. It was close, but I could see them pulling away. Why do I think, this is what I want to talk to you about. Why do I think the Eagles are covering that 8.5? I almost feel confident about them covering the 8.5. That's the one game I'm coming around on, because everyone's like, the Eagles have the best chance as an underdog. They do. But it's at 8.5. So if you really feel that way, I think the best bet on the board then is they're 8.5. They covered this. It was a backdoor cover, but they covered this in the regular season. I don't know. I feel like no one's talking about the 8.5. It's like you're getting the hook too. I'm
going to talk a lot about it tomorrow, and I'm probably going to come off as a little bit of a homer. But, I mean, that game, they moved the ball pretty easily on offense. It was week 6. It was a 28-22 game. Tampa also moved the ball on offense, but they had no answer for Antonio Brown, who is not there. Chris Godwin. Darius Slay has been playing really good football this year. I think he can do a decent job against Evans. My issue, and the Eagles know it, is Gronk. Gronk's going to eat him up. Tight ends have eaten them up all year long. The Chargers had 3 tight ends. 3 different ones score a touchdown against them in one game this season. Yeah. They have struggled against tight ends. But this is a team that is running the football really, really well. And I know it's the Bucs. You and I have talked about it. Teams don't even try to run on the Bucs. They get up on games. They have to get away from the game plan, and they throw the football. But do you remember last year when they played the Saints? They hadn't allowed a 100-yard rusher in 55 games. Hurts and Sanders had 100 yards. This season when they played the Saints, it's all anyone was talking about. Well, you're not going to be able to run on them again. The Saints had tape, had film, could adjust from playing Sanders and Hurts in that game, and still those two ran all over them again. This is an offensive line playing pretty good. I think they keep it close as well. And we're not asking them to win. We're asking them to cover by a touchdown here. And Gilden, I respect you. You're super sharp. You are taking shots at this Bengals. Jacobs, Mixon over Jacobs all day, dude. And the Bengals offensive line is better than the Raiders. Both are outside the top 20, but they're both graded. The Bengals are graded better than the Raiders. And neither team really has a great offensive line. We will say that. But, man, it's going to be an entertaining game. McCormick says he's locked in the Eagles +9. San Fran over. Yeah, I like this one, too. He's just trolling. I know you are. I'm trolling with you, dude. We're a fan of you here on this show, just like everybody else hanging out with us. Am the artist as well. McCormick, San Fran, Dallas over 49.5. I like that one quite a bit as well, too. I think both teams probably flirt with the 30 points, and we could see a lot of high-powered offense. This on the way out, this was from Paul Dehner Jr. The high on Saturday is slated to be 27 degrees, and he says Derek Carr for his career in games where kickoff temperature was even 37 degrees or less, 0-5, has never scored more than 17 points, one game with a passer rating over 78. Now, small sample size, different Raiders team than in years past, but something to keep in mind from a team that does play in the Dome, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I love Darren Waller, but I think his usage is important, right? Last game, they needed him, and they didn't really use him. So I know they have Foster Moreau. It's just, and he scored a touchdown in their last matchup. I just think if the Raiders want a shot, they gotta target him at least like 10 to 12 times. I know that sounds insane, but it's the way to beat the Bengals. So
yeah, it really is. Sean Evans hanging out as well. That's probably my second most intriguing game would be San Fran, Dallas, and I think San Fran wins. We'll give some picks tomorrow, but I think the 49ers go in there. It's not being a hater. I just really like this Niners team and what they can do. You and I have liked them as well. We'll take a quick break. We'll talk about your big win from yesterday, and we'll take a look at the NBA slate as well. So keep your lock. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here one final time. Man, I've given you 4 minutes to dive into the NBA, and there's only like a couple of games, but a big W from you last night, picking on my Mavs. Like, bing bong.
Well, we knew it yet. Well, there was a bing bong parlay in that. It was the Nets and the Knicks. And I loved, as a Net fan, like, I was really worried. Full disclosure, I did hedge when the Bulls went down like 15 before the fourth. They're a fourth quarter team, DeRozan, all that. So I was like, all right, I'll get great value. Threw a 20 spot on it. So 10 to win 1,000, doesn't happen often. Love it. DeJounte Murray caught his triple-double in garbage time. DeJounte Murray triple-double. We had Evan Mobley double-double, Celtics, Knicks, Nets, and I faded myself. So you got to be good to fade yourself. It could have been better if I didn't. I picked and choose. I picked and choose because I liked the Cavs, but I ended up losing on a parlay because I was on the Jazz. Again, I wear the sweatshirt. Can't be afraid to fade yourself. I have something for the people today, though, and you'll like it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as enticing. It's 30-1. I'm trying to pull it up in my bet slip, but this is giving me issues. It's all right. We're going to go with Klay Thompson over 2.5 threes at plus 110. Now, I know we bit the bullet on this when we went for his over at points.
Got to go back to it.
Going back to the well. I think it's a big game against the Bucks. Don't tell me it doesn't matter. It's a regular season game. It matters. I want to get down with some of the Bucks player props, but I can't really figure out how that's going to go yet, whether it's going to be Giannis or Middleton, but their double-double stuff is very enticing, or with Giannis to be a triple-double, and the line super low. So I'm going Klay and plus money over 2.5 threes. I am going to go with Ja Morant double-double. He's been going off, but has not hit a double-double in a minute. He is due. That is plus 210, I believe. And then I'm going to go to Jokic. Triple-double. This is something he does religiously, but hasn't done in a little bit as well. And he's plus 320 to do that against a Portland Trail Blazers team that is not very good. So those three together will get you about 30-1. That's going to be my player prop parlay today. I'm going to ride.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, I think you got to go back to Klay, right? A big game here today. I'm always going to take Klay over 2.5 threes at plus money. Like, he's plus 115. Like, the books have just like he's plus money all over the board. BetMGM has him at plus 15, DraftKings plus 105. Like, why not, right? Jump on this guy. We still got a couple minutes. I got this quote here. I don't know if you saw Big Ben, what he said at the press conference. I think it was last night. And I just see Rap Sheet saying that.
About the Chiefs?
Yeah, we got no shot. We're not going to win. We're just going to go out there and play like whatever, we're going to lose. And I saw this quote as well. As a group, you understand that we probably aren't supposed to be here. We're probably not a very good football team. Out of 14 teams I think are in, we're probably number 14. We don't have a chance, so let's go in and have fun. Hey, man, there's a little bit of, psychological, that could turn around. You're playing a little loose. Maybe some players inside the locker room are saying, listen, Ben, come on. Like, I'm going to prove you wrong. But Ben is probably thinking, he knows. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been here before. He's also realistic. They don't have much of a shot, but at the same time, pretty odd to hear, a quarterback say that.
Well, it's all psychological warfare. I love it. And it's a dangerous thing to tread on if you're the Chiefs. Like, if you hear that, they're playing with house money, man. Big Ben's farewell tour, he said they're probably plus 20 favorites, right? He's like, we're 20-point underdogs. They're only 12.5 now. Lines trading in their favor. I know Queisenberg was in the chat for us. I think the Steelers have a better shot than people are giving them credit for, but we could end on that. We'll talk about it later this week.
Yeah, we will have picks, props, touchdowns, you name it. We will have it on this show tomorrow. Thanks, Tino, for taking the time. As always, Paul Dehner Jr. as well. Have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.